Rise and shine, it's a brand new day. Cannon can take the stage, ready to play. Weekdays at 10, the cars in the scene. Coffee in hand, they're living the dream. Aggression in their voice, got the whole town awake. Bringing fire to the mic, make no mistake. Shows in the corner, spitting out facts. Dropping truth bombs, ain't holding back. Cannon in the morning, feel the heat. From 10 a.m. CST, can take a seat. We live and love that break in the mud. Light up your speakers, crank up the sound. They're talking about life upside down. Opinions exploding like a sonic blast. In the studio, they're built to last. With passion and grit, they engage and ignite. Every single week, they're a force can't fight. From sports to politics.
This is a Huddle Sports Network broadcast. You can find us on Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, Facebook, and of course YouTube. Get all your NFL news here first.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Ken and Ken in the Morning. It's Thursday? Good morning, Ken. How you doing?
Oh, half dead. Did a whole bunch of reorganizing the room yesterday, and I'm fucking whooped.
Whooped? What?
Oh, okay. Let me rephrase that. My crippled ass is hurting.
That's probably a little bit better to say.
Yeah.
So, hey, couple things. What's continuing from yesterday? So there's more smoke and fire and pissed offness on this whole collusion thing. And you know what? I had a thought in reading some of these articles. I'm like, okay, I get it. So you're mad that owner A talked to owner B about, oh, maybe we shouldn't give starting quarterbacks fully guaranteed money. Oh, but that's collusion. They can't do that. Okay, a couple thoughts. One, why the fuck not?
Oh, and I read an article this morning that perfectly touch on why the fuck not. Because the NFL teams are individual entities. They are not an actual full-blown organization, and them colluding would be in violation of the antitrust laws. The NFL had just had a court case about this in 2010, where they were the ones that fought to be recognized as individual entities, so it is now coming to bite them in the ass.
So that's interesting. And here's the other, and then here's the last thing. Even if they colluded, you still signed the mother effing contract. If you didn't get fully guaranteed and you signed the contract, guess what? Too bad. Honestly, that's the way I kind of look at that. On the other hand, if you really wanted the fully guaranteed, you could have just held out and not played and said, yep, I'm not going to play unless you fully guaranteed it. The fact that you still signed the contract, either way, to me.
But how many times have we seen guys hold out like Le'Veon Bell there for an entire year plus in their career's absolute trash after?
That is what is not my problem issue. That is their own problem. And you know, if they choose to do that, that is a tactic that they could have chosen to use. Either way, even without the collusion, I take the collusion out. Good morning, Joe. And let's say I'm Mark Davis. And let's say I didn't talk to another owner and I said, I'm not going to give you a fully guaranteed contract. You're either going to sign it or you're not. Even without the collusion, in a way, the collusion, while a spectacularly terrible look for the owners in that regard, at the end of the day is moot. Because either you're going to sign the contract or you're not going to sign the contract. And if you decide, well, I'm just not going to play, that is an option within your arsenal, right? To not sign that extension, to not sign that contract, to go elsewhere or seek more money or a better deal. You still signed the deal. No one put a gun to your head and said, if you don't sign this deal, I'm pulling the trigger. It's on you, right? You still, the player, had to either accept or not accept the deal. You accepted the deal.
Yeah, but this goes out a step further once you get to the Lamar Jackson there. How they never bothered to put a tag on him. No other team offered him any type of contract, period.
Well, it's not their problem. That's not Mark Davis's problem. That's not the Bears' problem, the Packers' problem.
When there was a whole bunch of quarterback needy teams, that points more towards collusion.
But once again, Now you have to prove that there was collusion not to sign him, period, that he was being blackballed. That's not the case. The collusion is, well, we don't want to give anyone a fully guaranteed contract. Okay, fine. That is not a good look. That is not, but look at, obviously owners still do it, Cleveland. At the end of the day, the player still either has a choice to make. I either sign this contract and play and get paid, or I don't. The fact whether it's fully guaranteed or not, look at the collusion piece. I get why there's upset, but even when they go to if they were to go to a judge and I say Justin Herbert's the best case for this, Justin Herbert's still going to lose. Because at the end of the day, a judge is going to say, you know what, you still had a choice to not sign that contract, and you decided to sign that contract. End of the day, that's really the death knell. That is the ace in the hole for the owners in the league, or the owners, not the league in this case. They still signed the contract. They weren't forced. They weren't coerced into signing a contract. It's either you sign it and you stay, you sign it and you don't stay, or you don't stay. Those are your options. Your choice.
It was either accept the deal they offered you, or you're going to make absolutely nothing.
Once again, your choice. When someone goes to work and their boss says, "Hey, we're making structural changes within the corporation. You can either take a pay cut or leave." You have a choice to make.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't see people going, suing IBM and Microsoft and Boeing, all these companies when that kind of stuff happens, because that's business.
Yeah, but there are exceptions to the rule. Like if a company is making policy changes that violate your rights in some way, then
Correct.
you can. And, I went through that personally. That's why I can say that. And so I understand your point, and I don't necessarily disagree, but I think there are always exceptions. The problem is that the players can't prove. Ken's right. It's going to be almost impossible to prove collusion, because you don't have access to their emails. You don't have access to anything that shows them directly colluding. Like you don't have video, transcripts or tapes of their phone calls where they're saying, "Hey, we're gonna work together to not give this guy fully guaranteed contract."
Well, there's two pieces to that, right? One is you have to. Let's say they can show collusion that owners said, talk to each other, said, "Hey, we're not gonna give fully guaranteed contracts to players." Okay, that's the first part, and that's a slippery slope that the NFL screwed itself on, because now there are all these antitrust, blah blah blah. You might have screwed yourself. But the bigger part that they have to prove is not that he was blackballed. Like, hey, Joe, not only are we not going to give him a guaranteed contract, but you can't offer him a deal either. We're going to force him to sign with us. And now you have to show that all 32 teams agreed that no one was going to offer Lamar Jackson a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to do that. You see what I'm saying?
Unless you get access to all those emails. And by now, those emails are long gone. I mean, you might be able to dig it up with a forensic accountant, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But
wait, there we go. Sorry,
a really good IT guy. You might be able to dig it up with a really good IT guy, but I don't know,
but
dude.
Even then, now you got to deal with the legality of it. If someone's email gets hacked, that's not necessarily legally.
Well, I was going to say it'd have to be under court order.
Yeah. So, and how do you prove that? Like, I didn't pick up the phone and call Joe, and we had a conversation on the phone. Oh, well, you called Joe. Well, yeah, he's an owner. We talk all the time. There's nothing illegal with that. Owners are smart. Some are stupid. Some are smarter. And the problem is...
Yeah, and I would expect that if the owners did have some sort of collusion going on, they're probably not doing it through a traceable source like email. They're probably doing it through phone calls.
It was
carrier pigeons.
It was in person at the owners' meeting, and there is stuff that goes to prove it, that all this had come out, and that it had gotten buried by the NFL Players Association, which brings up a whole nother bag of questions.
And that's another piece to it. The players really have because their own organization was a part of it. So look, it's a bad story. It's a bad look for the NFL. Luckily, it's in a time period where everyone's going to forget about it, and within a week or two, when the season gets ready to kick off and we get ready for camp, it's going to be forgotten. But honestly, it's great right now because there's nothing else to talk about. But it's a nothing burger going forward. It's not going to change contracts. It's not going to change anything. There's not going to be a players' strike. There's not going to be any lawsuits won by players because they have to, at the end of the day, you still sign the contract. You can't prove that you're blackballed into signing the contract. And, oh, by the way, your own advocate, the Players Association, was in on it. So, they'd have to sue them too. So right now, calls into play like, okay, really the bigger story is the NFLPA going to even survive? Like right now, the players got to be living with the NFLPA.
Well, I'm going to assume it's going to survive, but there might be a total regime change over there.
So that's what I'm saying. That's going to set the NFLPA back. I know we're going to start talking about the collective bargaining agreement now, which doesn't even do for another 3 or 4 years. Well, guess what? It might set them back that 3 or 4 years. So really, they screwed themselves, or at least the NFLPA, the players didn't, but their organization screwed them. Mm-hmm. So honestly, I think that's maybe the bigger news. I mean, the antitrust thing is huge in terms of Congress, right? If the NFL steps out of line, the Congress can say, well, we're just going to take away your antitrust. That's always been their tool, right? When the NFL is doing things that the government doesn't like. So yeah, I mean, that's going to be interesting. And I was going to get to this in a little bit. The Bucks. Side note: the Bucks extended their head coach and GM today too. And it's funny because that's not a side note. That normally would be the news of the day. Today it's a side note, and actually it's a side note to even another issue. Right? Second round picks holding the line. Yep, that'll be interesting if none of them are playing by the beginning of the season. Guess what? The Cincinnati Bengals might not be the Cincinnati Bengals much longer.
Oh.
The Bengals are having a serious stadium issue with the city who holds the lease. And they have not re-signed their lease. They have until June 30th. They have not re-signed the lease. So wait, they have till 4 days. Because they need renovations to the stadium that they've been in for 25 years. And there's discussion. So if they basically, here's the deal. They're under lease for this season. If they don't sign the extension, this is it. The season, and they leave. If they can sign a 2-year extension, which gives them 2 more years to figure this out. There is talk that the Bengals may leave Cincinnati, and there's a clear pathway for them to do so. So, hey, city of Chicago, you're mad the Bears are going to build in Arlington? Offer up Soldier Field and make some renovations for them. Right? There's been talk of that, right? Or hey, think of another city that really that has a population that wants an NFL team, like I don't know, Birmingham, Alabama. Put a team in Birmingham. Happens, right? Put a team. There are a couple places. If you give Oklahoma City, right? So there are.
Where the hell was it that the Bears were going to move 2 years ago?
Gary, Indiana. That's in the 80s, dude. Years ago. You're talking decades ago. So the threat after the 85 Super Bowl, when they wanted to get to something done with Soldier Field, was that they were moving to Gary, Indiana. And what happened was we got the spaceship that landed in Soldier Field that made it its current abomination. So that's how the renovations were done in the 90s, was that threat. But that is. Well, look, I'm telling you why they moved, because they're in an old stadium. And good morning, Cam. It's a very real possibility that they could seek to move. It's not unheard of. The owners aren't going to stop them from moving. The only reason why the owners stop a team from moving is if you're going to move too close to their market, if you're going to dig into their market share, right? So, the Bears would obviously be happy with the Bengals coming to Chicago. They would object. The Packers might object. Those teams might object, even though they're NFC teams. They might object to another franchise being in the market. However, if he wants to move the team to Oklahoma City, no one might object to that. If he wants to move to Louisville, which has an NFL ready stadium, they might not object to that. If they want to move to other certain places, the ownerships might not give a rat's ass.
So what you're saying, Ken, is my hope for a professional franchise in Syracuse to come again is already down the toilet.
Yeah, cause you would think that
Buffalo,
would, but however, curveball, Toronto could be a possibility.
I think that's still part of Buffalo's market.
Partially,
I know it was years ago from when they played the games over there, but I'm pretty sure that's still a part of their market.
Luca, it does not mean it's outside of the realm of possibilities, and that is what is being reported. If they don't have a stadium to play in, they're going to move. Oh, Motown Mitch switched it up today. Oh, my goodness. He's back on my crap list because he didn't include anyone but the Bears, I tell you. But no, this is that's look. It's not like it's cut and dry simple. Obviously, for them to relocate, there are hurdles. But if they don't have a stadium to play in, the NFL is not going to let them not play somewhere. They'll let them move at the end of the day. I mean, honestly, look at when the Raiders moved, man, the NFL wasn't stopping the Raiders; they were moving.
But that's because Jerry got on board, and Jerry sort of quarterbacked that thing, So if the Bengals can get Jerry on board, and Jerry, all you got to do Jerry's all about dollars and cents, man. If you can
St.
show
Louis makes sense.
St. Louis, I just said that St. Louis, they're desperate for a football team,
Yep.
Ever since losing the Rams.
It really, I mean, and Luke, you have to ask yourself, why would the owners say no? And you were saying, well, they don't have liquidity. Really, how much does it cost to have moving trucks? Because I'll tell you what, St. Louis, not only does St. Louis have a stadium and it has practice facilities and everything that the Rams used to have that are still there and available.
Well, the thing is, there's a moving fee that you have to pay, and it's $500 million.
Ooh.
Like the Raiders had to pay that too. You have to pay that to the other owners. So that could be what Luca means by a liquidity issue, is they don't have the $500 million moving fee.
Here's the thing, though. They made a deal, John Dorn, that's about to expire. That's the thing about the stadium thing with them. Their deal in Cincinnati is about to expire. Let me get you guys the actual verbiage, if you will, on this. Let me get that really quick up for you guys. I went too far there. There collusion. Okay, here we go. So here's the thing. They've played there since 2000. By June 30th, the Bengals will have to agree to a lease offer from the county or exercise an option that extends the current lease for 2 years. Okay. So the current lease expires June 30th of next year. Okay. So they're good for this season, like I said. But they're looking to make changes to the stadium, basically upgrades, renovations, blah, 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 blah. If they can't get that, they are considering a move. And it comes down to money. So, I mean, it's really that. They could move. They could move. Their deal's going to be done, Dorn. So it's not like they're breaking a lease deal. And they could always break a lease deal. Look at the Bears are going to break the lease deal with the city of Chicago if they build a new stadium in Arlington Heights before 2030 and move. Guess what? They'll break that lease deal because the Bears lease deal goes to 2030. So, I'll tell you what, they could actually do this if they don't get something worked out. I think they might sign the extension and give them more time, but they may say, we're not signing anything. They just made a deal just now. Drop the link to that deal because I'm not seeing it. If they made a deal just now, cool. Then that changes the whole story, doesn't it?
Yeah, but to me, it just screams money grab. Like, they're just the Bengals are just doing what other teams have already done, which is trying to pressure the city for a taxpayer-funded, basically taxpayer-subsidized state. That's the new way of things in the NFL.
Yeah,
they want the $1 billion taxpayers-paid stadium.
Yeah, they have a deal now in place to the mid 2030s.
Okay, so that just broke because I'm looking at the articles. The last article is like an hour ago.
Yeah, I'm looking at one
the
from an
deadline
hour ago
approached.
too.
So that literally happened as we were talking about it that this news broke. Look at that. We create breaking news. So they're going to stay at Paycor for at least a couple years then and get some upgrades.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go. Yep, just released 20 minutes ago. So right as we went on air, they made a deal, looks like. Yep. That's hilarious.
Good news for the city.
Well, the
good
deal
news for
has to get
Cincinnati.
voted on first. The vote has to get the vote has to the deal has to be voted on by the county commissioners on Thursday. So, but obviously they're going to vote yes on it. It sounds like because they probably that's one of the things you don't make the deal unless you already know you're going to get the votes if you're the county. But they don't really say much about what the deal is to say. Just the two sides agreed on a deal to keep a team at Paycor Stadium to at least the mid 2030s. So that's hilarious. It breaks as we're talking about it. Well, thank you, Dorn, for being on top of it and catching that wire while we were talking about it. Like a breaking news and fool's gold is John Dorn. But I mean, that's the power these teams really have to get a deal made. I mean, you can just up and move. And the Bears, they were kind of like, when their situation was a little different because they're obviously further out from their lease deal ending, right? But the Bengals just got them a little deal, at least for another, mid 30, so okay, 35. So it's what, about 10-year deal, 10-year deal. So that buys them some time to get a new stadium. I bet their next deal will be a new stadium, depending on what the renovation
or possibly part of the deal is the renovations. Like we'll sign the long-term lease, but it's got to include some renovations.
Yeah. Oh, it's
I would imagine
to include. They definitely got renovations, but is it going to be long-term renovations or short-term renovations, right? So, like when the Bears did their deal with Soldier, is long-term renovation deal. But sometimes you'll see a deal like, hey, look, just improve it this little bit, but we want a new stadium. So we don't want you to spend a lot of money, but because we want you to put the money into a new stadium, and let's do that. But these buildings being 25 years old, it's not like you have to demolish them; you just have to renovate them. And we've shown in the NFL that you can renovate these stadiums and extend their lives 20, 30 years. So, yeah, it's probably renovation, Joe. You're probably right. I mean, that would have been something to have the Bengals actually move, though.
Not for Cincinnati. There'd be no reason to visit that shithole at that point.
Yeah.
Like, what are they going to do without the Bengals, dude? Like,
Do they even have anything else?
Skyline Chili. That's about it.
That's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, they've got an interesting market too because they're designed to be there. They were placed there because of Kentucky to draw people from Louisville and Lexington and all these other places, and they do. But so that's good for the city of Cincinnati. They came to a deal then as we were on air today. That would have been interesting to see them move to St. Louis. St. Louis has been screaming to get a football franchise back. First the Cardinals left to go to Arizona. Then Miss Georgia Fontaine moves the Rams to St. Louis. They're there for 20 years? The second she passes away, the new ownership takes them right back to L.A. So it's like they were on loan for 20 years from L.A., I guess. It's just St. Louis is a hard sell because that's a baseball town. And when the Cardinals are playing, no one's going to anything else. And the pecking order in St. Louis has always been Cardinals, Blues, everything else. So if you had a weekend where you had a Sunday where you had a baseball game, a hockey game, and a football game all going at the same time, that's how. Oh, and they all share the same parking areas, by the way. But the Rams game would be empty. So yeah, but they've been screaming for a football team in St. Louis.
But they don't want to pay for a new stadium.
Well,
that was why the Rams left originally.
Yeah, the Edwards Jones Dome, which almost became the dirt cheap dome, which originally was a TWA dome. It's not a bad dome. It's not a bad stadium. It's got a good seating capacity. I mean, St. Louis had a hard time filling it. for the most part.
I'm not saying it's a bad stadium. I'm just saying that the city of St. Louis doesn't want to pay for a new one because that's why the Rams left. Because Stan Kroenke, the owner of the Rams, wanted a new stadium, and he actually built it with his own money. He built SoFi.
Yeah.
SoFi.
Yeah, see, that's where I go to. Like, I think we were talking about yesterday. Where St. Louis, there's two St. Louis's, right? There's St. Louis City County and St. Louis County, and they hate each other. The city and the county do not get along. As in the county, that's not St. Louis City County. St. Louis County is not the city of St. Louis. A lot of people get that confused. St. Louis County is the suburbs right out on the outskirts of the city, right? I mean, right there. It's, Creve Coeur, Olive, all that stuff. That's all St. Louis County. They do not like the city county. They do not see eye to eye on anything. So I'm not surprised. In the city of St. Louis, I mean, I don't know where they would put a state. They could. There's nowhere to put a stadium in the downtown area that I can think of. They'd have to tear down the dome and build a new one from scratch, pretty much. And they use that. And that's the dome is attached to the convention center, which is a main life source for funding that comes into the city. So that would be a hard pill for them. And I don't think the county really wants a stadium in the county.
Yeah.
So
on a side note, I've been to St. Louis before, and that place is rough.
It is. I lived there for a few years. Trust me. It's such a weird,
rough.
And the way it's designed, there's no direct route from point A to point B. If you don't know side roads in St. Louis, you're screwed. You've got
you're gonna get stuck in the wrong part of town, and and I'm from the Bay Area, so I've seen some shit. But St. Louis, let me tell you, St. Louis is its own special level of shit.
Luca, East St. Boogie is not. That's in Illinois. It's not Missouri. Good old East St. Boogie. I used to be. In fact, I was in a unit on 29th in State in East St. Louis. Trust me, I know East St. Louis. I've stayed in East St. Louis quite a bit. East St. Boogie, though, that's on the Illinois side. It's gotten better with the casino boats and everything else, actually. East St. Louis is not what it was in the 80s and 90s. But the city itself, like, even if you go where WashU is, you go a couple blocks away, you don't want to be there, for where Washington University is. And that's a nice area where WashU is, actually. Got some good restaurants and stuff like that. But yeah, St. Louis is a very weird city, very racist city, believe it or not. We lost Ken there for a minute. So St. Louis is kind of a hard sell. And the county and the city hate each other. Like, they're diametrically, they just not. And you couldn't even put a stadium by UMSL, University of Missouri St. Louis. There's nothing there by the airport. You could go to South County, maybe. But yeah, St. Louis is a weird place. They almost have to tear the dome down and build something new. But they use a dome for so many other things. So I don't know if we'll ever get a new stadium in St. Louis.
Mm-hmm. Hence why they'll probably not get a football team. Yeah.
I mean, look, you've already had two NFL franchises, and both of them have bounced on you. So like if you're an NFL team, are you wanting to go to St. Louis when you've already had two teams and both times they've left? That's kind of a hard sell there. Oh, now we're getting Ken back. There he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From internet.
St. Louis is going to be a hard sell for any franchise. I mean, you've had two franchises in St. Louis, both have left. What franchise? It's kind of even though they've got facilities and they got a fan base that really wants teams to be there, dude, you've lost two. And it's not like you've lost two. When did Arizona leave? In the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, somewhere around there. And then you had the Rams, and they just left.
Well, I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean too much because look at how many teams LA lost, and now they're back there again.
Well, I don't consider them losing the Raiders. The Raiders were originally Oakland's, and then so the Raiders went to LA for a couple of years and went back to Oakland. Okay, fine. The Rams are the only team they really truly lost, and they lost them for about 2 decades, and they came right back home. So once again, a team on loan.
Yeah.
LA is a quagmire too because they can more than support a professional franchise. And then San Diego says, the Chargers go, we're leaving San Diego, we're going to LA. So, I mean, they're back to 2 teams. San Diego could get a franchise. I know they want
Except that
franchise.
San Diego has the same problem as St. Louis.
Yeah.
They have a fiscally responsible city council that doesn't want to spend $2 billion on a stadium. Like that's going to be a huge problem going forward.
St. Louis is not that they're fiscally responsible; it's that they're cheap asses. This is a city.
Same difference.
St. Louis is a city that at one point had more Fortune 500 companies headquarters in it than you would think. They had a lot of corporate entities in the St. Louis area. And then the city and the state raised corporate taxes through the roof, and they all left. So that's why St. Louis has no money. They ran all the businesses out. The only thing left there is Budweiser and Farina. Everything else pretty much, and Monsanto is still there. Everything else pretty much left. Boeing still has a plant there that builds Super Hornets, but they're looking to relocate that plant out of St. Louis. Corporate taxes, man. Same thing same reason why Tesla left California and moved to Texas. Taxes. St. Louis taxed the hell out of people. That's the other reason why they're having issues. San Diego. I think San Diego, they would spend some money to put a stadium because they're feeling the negative effects of the Chargers leaving. They really are.
Really? They're missing all 3 of their fans.
Yeah, all 3 of them. I mean, but having an NFL franchise is an economic plus for a city.
We hear that, but the city of Oakland did the same thing, and they broke it down and they said it's really not the boon that you would think it is. Like, Oakland didn't want to build a stadium for the Raiders because they still owed like $100 and something million on the renovations that they did to the Coliseum in '95 for the Raiders to come back. And so they were like, why are we going to spend? And the thing is, this is the part where it made me not mad about the Raiders moving is Mark Davis. He negotiated in good faith. He was willing to put up Mark Davis wasn't rich at the time. Like, he only had 500. His whole stake in the team was worth $500 million, and he was willing to put up his whole stake in the team. And the stadium that he was proposing was only about $900 million. And then he got an additional $200 million in funding from the NFL. So he was only asking the city of Oakland for $200 million to complete the stadium, and they wouldn't give it.
And now he's got the Death Star, which is freaking awesome.
Yeah, and
it is reaping the benefits.
And it pretty much like 10x'd his net worth. Now he's worth somewhere in the neighborhood of, and let's say 5 or 6x. Like, he's now in the neighborhood of like $3 or $4 billion.
Yeah, it's amazing. But like the city of Oakland, though, I mean, they're losing the A's too. I mean, they ran both their franchise out of town. Look at Oakland doesn't really care as much because
actually all 3 of their franchises, because the Warriors are now in San Francisco.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, well, the Warriors was always a Bay Area, both either city kind of thing. They tried to not claim one or the other, right, to make it a Bay Area thing. But that's the thing with the Bay Area. Like, okay, football fans just go watch the 49ers and they go watch the Giants for baseball. And there's that. But Oakland has now made sure that in the battle of the 2 cities that they are now always going to be the weaker of the 2. San Francisco has all the sports teams. They have all the money. And they have all the pretentiousness too. And Oakland is going to have all the crime and none of the money and no sports teams. I mean, think about that. I mean, California is weird because, I mean, okay, they lose the Chargers but keep the Chargers in the state. But they have 2 cities now that used to have professional sports franchises that have lost them. The only thing that San Diego has left is the Padres, and I'm not so sure the Padres are going to be staying in San Diego forever. So it's kind of interesting with these stadium moves, and the Bears are going to move to Arlington probably, and the Packers are going nowhere for the foreseeable future. But I can foresee a time where the Packers are going to have to do something with that stadium, right? Every year,
Yeah, but I don't think Green Bay is gonna. I think Green Bay is gonna jump to the table to build them a stadium when it's time.
I don't think they're ever going to build a new stadium. I think they're just going to find a way to massively renovate.
There you go. They won't build a new stadium. It'll just be more renovations like we've seen over the years.
They may have to play Milwaukee for a season, kind of thing. But I don't think they're going to. And Milwaukee's screaming for more games, right? Didn't Milwaukee just build a stadium or do something? They want more games in Milwaukee. So, and remember, was it 20% of the season ticket holders are from Milwaukee? Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because of them, when they used to play the games there at City Stadium or something like that.
Yeah, look in the 80s. When they stopped that? Early 90s is when they stopped that?
I don't remember if it was early 90s or early thousands, but it switched over to where the Milwaukee fans that had the tickets to those games now just get the tickets in Green Bay for a couple of games.
Luca. Look, Ken, don't get mad at Luca because you know what? He's not wrong. Dude,
Hey, no. You leave the stadium bleachers alone.
Dude, no, I mean, seriously, though, like, some of these high schools in Texas have stadiums that rival, like, D1 and NFL level. I mean, maybe not NFL level, but D1. Some of these high school stadiums in Texas are redonkulous. Mm-hmm. They are just stupid. Like, oh, my God.
Football is life.
Yeah. Luca's not completely wrong there. He's wrong, but he's not completely wrong. I mean, but no, Lambeau, I mean, it's funny, though, because they want games in Milwaukee, so that might be the deal. Like, look, you guys give us a boatload of money to redo Lambeau, and we'll play a full season in Milwaukee. And Milwaukee might take that on because part of we'll play a full season and keep open the possibility of playing maybe 2 games a year again like we used to in Milwaukee, right? And they'll dangle that carrot. And that's how they'll get the state of Wisconsin and the taxpayers in Milwaukee to all vote yes on a statewide bill of something to get funding to build, renovate Lambeau. Is it
I don't remember the exact number, but it rotates a bit to where it's either 2 and 3 games or it's 3 and 4 games, depending on the year.
Yeah, I knew there was something like that with and the most, it's funny, a lot of those guys just end up selling their tickets because they don't want to make the drive. Okay.
Well, Green Bay's been pulling season tickets from guys that are selling. It was either 80 or 90% of the tickets that they would get. They're starting to pull their season ticket license and give it to other fans.
Yeah, secondary market, man. It's brutal. But I
wish they'd do that in Vegas.
Yeah, I could see. I could definitely see that though with the Packers. Like, I could see them getting a renovation. They're going to renovate. They're never going to move out of that stadium. They will find a way to. And look at. They don't need the Packers are a unicorn though compared to some of these other franchises. They don't need all the luxury boxes. They don't need all the other things that other teams want because look at their market. Green Bay is not a major metropolitan area. Hell, I think Pensacola, Florida is about the same size as Green Bay, Wisconsin. It's a smaller market. They don't need
the smallest market.
Yeah, but no, I'm just saying, though, it's a small market, though. Like, like Louisville is probably a bigger market. Oklahoma City is a bigger market, right? So, like, Green Bay is not looking for an 85,000-seat SoFi with super luxury boxes and all kinds of other crap. They don't need that. They're not looking to expand the size of the seating. In fact, if they got rid of the benches, would they lose like 5,000 or 10,000 people capacity if they went to seats and got rid of the benches? I think there was a study done. So if they, if anything, if they're going to get away from the benches, they're losing capacity.
Yeah, you're not going to see that because a lot of the Packer fans like the stadium benches because it gives you that hometown type of vibe.
Yeah, which is what the stadium kind of is anyway. It kind of fits the motif. So the Packers renovations, they're going to update their luxury boxes. Of course, they're going to do that. And they're going to update the locker rooms and other things. But I can see the Packers.
the fifth giant video screen to the stadium and all that type of nonsense.
Increase the capacity of the sheep brothel.
Well, they don't have an owner though, Luca. That's the other thing with the Packers. They don't have an owner.
I was going to say that's the joke he was making.
Yeah. Packer backs are too fat for seats.
Hey, they sell stadium seats. I have one right next to me. They just clip in onto the bleacher.
So I mean, yeah, that's not what he was meaning though. Ken. He was talking about all the cheese that the dairy making them as bad as the cows they get their milk from.
Hey, you're talking to a fat guy here that's a Packers fan. You really think I'm going to push back against that?
Hey, I wasn't going to say that, Ken. That's all you for noting that. But no,
I just want to know, like, you know how, like, on an airplane, if somebody's too grossly fat, they make them buy 2 seats? Do they do the same thing in Green Bay?
I wish they would.
So, I mean, I don't know, Ken, have you heard anything about Lambeau getting upgraded or the team? I mean, I'm sure it's got to be a conversation.
They're vaguely talking about something because our lease is coming up soon. And there was something that it was about it, but it only got mentioned in passing type of thing. And I haven't heard any type of more updates on it. So probably
Didn't they just update it in like 2008 or something like that?
Would you say, Joe?
Didn't they just renovate it in like 2007 or 2008 or something like that?
They just re-renovated it again. Shit, I think it was like in 2020. But that one wasn't like a huge renovation. I think they just added like a couple more rows of seats and redid the Videotron.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Wrigley, with the Cubs, right? Like Wrigley's gone through some renovations, a bunch of them since the Ricketts had bought the team, but a lot of it was like, patch the concrete that was starting to crack and fall. You know what I'm saying? Fix girders. It's an old stadium, so a lot of the renovations you see on these older stadiums aren't, let's add luxury boxes. Like, no, we got to repair shit and maintain it, right? We need some extra cash because if we don't, the entire upper deck might crash. The major renovations come in small. Like with Wrigley, they've done a couple renovations now over, right? Some major, some not. I think Green Bay's is kind of like the same thing as like Wrigley with that field. You'll see there's renovations we've seen every couple of years, but they're, we're going to add a couple rows here. We're going to fix this stuff here. But I'm talking a major renovation, an overhaul of the stadium they haven't quite had. I can see the Packers. I don't see them ever building a new stadium to replace Lambeau, but I could see a massive renovation.
Man, I don't know if you'd get a massive one just because of all the history that's tied to it and how much Packer fans are in for the Packer history. That would almost be taking something away at that point. That, it's nice to have the updated stadium, but part of the allure of Lambeau is that it's a throwback type of stadium.
Yeah, they said the same thing about Yankee Stadium, Ken.
Huge difference.
No.
Yeah.
Babe Ruth built one. He didn't build the other. I mean, it's like the argument actually, Ken, I'd say it's more like Wrigley. Like, I don't think the Cubs will ever leave Wrigley. I don't think the Packers will ever leave Lambeau. They're very symbiotic in a certain type of way. They're neighborhood stadiums. They're part of a community in the neighborhood. They play an integral part of the neighborhoods they're in, not just as stadiums, but when I'm talking massive overhaul renovation, I think Luca seems like here, renovating the irrigation system, heating systems for the field and the stands. They're going to, maybe add some boxes.
No, you want to know what the heating system is for the stands? The body heat of the guys next to you.
Yeah, those are the kind of renovations. I'm like not like a facelift like what happened to Soldier Field, right? They won't change the aesthetic of the field, but there'll be a major renovation to that field at some point. It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
I always wanted to go to a Cubs game at Wrigley.
It's a blast, dude. You'll love going to Wrigley if you ever get a chance. I call it the world's biggest beer garden. It doesn't hurt. The Cubs are really good right now too, but and Lambeau is like the second biggest beer garden after Wrigley. I think Lambeau will go through renovations kind of similar to like a Wrigley, but they're going to feel pressures to renovate as all these NFL teams are getting either major renovations or new stadiums. That eventually Green Bay is going to have to do a major renovation for the fan experience and the playing experience, while still trying to maintain the visual that is Lambeau, right, and not destroy what Lambeau is, and that's a tough task.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know how many new updates I'd want done to that field.
Well, some of the stuff you're not going to even see. Like, you won't see if they change, like, to make this for the fan experience, like heating, like what the Buffalo is doing. They're going to basically, the concrete's going to be heated throughout the entire stadium, right? So, like, the seating area will be heated. That's a major renovation. We have to tear everything out and redo it all.
Yeah, but then you're going to get Packer fans bitching that you just made their beer piss warm.
Okay, but there's more heat in the concourse is changing a lot. There's a lot of stuff that the fans won't necessarily see, but will require major renovations.
That was one of the major renovations we did.
I'm not going to say they're going to add 50. They're not going to. Yeah, but that locker room now, compared to locker rooms in the rest of the league, is going to be way behind the power curve, right? So, I mean, that's to say, eventually Green Bay is going to have to do something. I don't see them ever leaving the stadium, though. I think they're just going to renovate, and it's going to be a tough task. But look, we know there's going to be a company or two out there who are going to be up to the task, and they're going to do it, and they're going to do it right. It's just going to be expensive, and that's what's going to make it even more expensive, because they have to do it a certain way, right? They can't just knock it down and start from scratch, which would be cheaper in some ways. They're going to have to be very specific in the way they do things. That's going to drive the cost up. But they'll be able to get it done. It's going to be costly, but I think at the end of the day, that's how Milwaukee gets itself a game or two or a season of games in Milwaukee. So I think the Packers will strike a deal. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens within the next decade, to be honest with you, especially if the Bears get a new stadium, and now you've got, Ford Field is still better. So I can see the Packers getting a renovation. At some point, it's going to happen. But they're never going to leave. That's one franchise is not leaving anywhere. And for the biggest part, I don't even think they legally could they? I mean, the town owns them.
The town itself doesn't own them. The fans are the ones that own them. But the only thing they have with the town is the leasing of the land where the stadium.
So wait a minute. With no direct ownership, then who decides on the board?
The Packers have the CEO. That's now we had just changed from Mark Murphy to Ed Powers.
That's not. Who determines the CEO? Who hires the CEO?
There's some type of board that they have of. I don't know how they pick the officials for it. I'd have to look into that one personally.
Yeah, see, the Packers, I mean, the ownership for them, they don't have an actual owner. It's like they're the city. It's such a. So I mean, they really can't move. It's not like they're going to pick up. There's no owner that's going to pick that team up and move it. Is the point? They are a weird bird in the world of professional sports in the States. I like what they're doing with the tickets, though. That's kind of like what they do in Germany with the Bundesliga. Like, if you can go to StubHub, your ticket might not work when you get to the gate because the club will have revoked it, because if you bought it on StubHub. They do have StubHub over there, but the law is really, they have a 10% markup law in Germany. And even then, you're not allowed to resell your ticket unless it's through the authorized agent, which is the club. So they have a lot stricter policies in Europe for buying these tickets secondhand. It's interesting, and I think that's great that Green Bay is kind of adopting some of that model and getting rid of season ticket holders that are doing that. Hell, my sister's a season ticket holder for the Chicago Cubs, and she lives in L.A. She sells 90% of her tickets.
Yeah, that's what Green Bay is trying to get rid of, is the people that don't even live there and maybe go to a game or two.
Yeah, my sister's
they want that stadium filled with as many actual Packer fans. And,
well, in my sister's defense, she does go to Chicago for a game or two a year, a series or two a year. But like she gives a lot. Like my cousin goes to a lot of games. She just gets my sister's tickets. But so yeah, but she would be right for that program that Packers are doing. Like, oh wait, you live in LA? Yeah, your season tickets are gone. I could see that happening at some point. You know, it's if the problem was pervasive with the Cubs and they went that route, my sister would lose her season tickets in a heartbeat. That's why I never tried to buy season tickets. I don't live in Chicago anymore. Why would I get Bears season tickets or Cubs season tickets? Uh-oh.
Oh, jeez. Sorry, we don't got an old fat guy up in the owner's deck.
You know, but Luca, that's a good point because, like, if we know that if Minnesota made $1 billion in profit, what happened to the $1 billion in profit the Packers made? Where did that money go?
Where that money goes is they have a fund that they stock the surplus into to where if the salary cap goes away to where they can still stay afloat.
Why isn't Green Bay not the most beautiful city in America with gold paved streets and beautiful houses? I mean, seriously, man, like where's all that money going that Green Bay's making? They're making almost $1 billion
I just told you, it goes into a special account.
Okay, well, the special account doesn't have all of it. It have hundreds of billions of dollars in it by this point.
Well, I was going to say, Green Bay is the smallest market. They're not making a super thing. They're making good money, don't get me wrong.
So I mean, look at why are there so potholes in the streets? Why isn't everything pristine and gorgeous? They should be the most picture-perfect American community on the planet, right? But they're not.
I was going to say, I honestly, anytime I've gone to Green Bay, I don't remember there being potholes in the streets there. That place is pretty well kept.
I don't know, Joe. I think I agree with Luke. A little something fishy with the money there. I mean, they should be sparkles and gold, right? With all the money they're making in that town. They're making more money than some like a city like St. Louis.
Man, then I guess you'd have to talk about the fleecing that the actual owners are doing of these towns and cities to get them to pay in when they don't actually own a part of the team.
The Packers are making $1 billion a year and they're community owned. Why is that community not flush?
Because they're not community owned; they're fan owned.
There should be a sheep for every arm.
Yeah, I mean they should.
No, there's got to be 2 sheep. Damn it!
Hey, whatever the community, the fans, whatever. I mean, Green Bay should be flush with cash, but they're not. What's up with that, man? I think Luca's onto something. Luca investigates. We're gonna have a new segment. Luca investigates. I think Luca should investigate where the money goes in Green Bay. There we go. Our man on the street, our traveling reporter Luca is gonna get to the bottom of where all the money in Green Bay is going and where it's being money laundered. What drug cartels actually get?
Yeah. Only in a Chicago Bears fan mind are they going to have it to where, Green Bay's doing all this stuff so we can finally get them out of the league so we don't get our ass kicked by them all the time.
Damn.
No, that wouldn't be the case because we've kicked your ass for many years too. But I would say, Luca's onto something. Luca, I think Luca's gonna find that out, and he's gonna let us know. Luca investigates. There we go. The new investigative series throughout the season. For every road game Luca goes to, he'll do an investigative report on the team that like where their money is being scammed to. There we go. And of course, the Vikings will always look good because he's a Vikings fan. Damn.
Yeah, I was going to say that's where a lot of the money has gone too, is developing the area.
That is a nice development. Yeah, it is. Even though they're not really title town, it is a nice development.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because Green Bay has won how many titles in the last 5 decades?
Oh, I see. We're breaking out those Detroit fan blinders.
Seriously, if you're going to call yourself
I'm pretty sure you guys have been in the league just about as long as us.
If you want to be title town, be St. Louis with all their World Series championships and Stanley Cups and Super Bowls. Be Boston. They're more of a title town.
Well,
right? Joe, to you, doesn't it name title town? To me, it says if you're a title town, that means you have a lot of titles.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, isn't that a title that you have to maintain? And have the Packers maintained that over the last 5 or 6 decades?
We keep adding more
other cities. compared to other cities. And I'm not even saying Chicago, even though Chicago's won more titles as a city than Green Bay has since 2010.
Okay, well, we're going to count a major metropolitan area against
you're claiming to
pretty
be
much a
title
small
town.
town.
The Blackhawks have 3 Stanley Cups. The Cubs have a World Series. That's 4 right there. How many does Green Bay have since 2010? 1.
Yeah, huge difference of we have one franchise there.
Heck,
You guys had to shoehorn
Miami
in
has
all
more
those other
titles.
franchises to seem like
Miami has
Chicago
more
was a real
titles.
city.
Miami has more titles in the last 2 years than you have in the last 4 decades. They have back-to-back Stanley Cups. They're more of a title town. If you really want to go there, if you're a title town, you win titles. Okay, when was the last time you won a title? 15 years ago.
Well, hey, since you like to follow the law of it, I guess it's a good thing we trademarked it and they didn't.
I mean, Minnesota can't be title town. They haven't. When was the last time a Minnesota team won anything? Detroit can't be title town. The Red Wings are the last thing to win there, the cup, right? The the Pistons haven't won anything in a while. Heck, even Milwaukee has more titles in recent history than Green Bay. At least the Bucks won something. I'm just saying. But I think the title town development is a really cool thing that they did do there, and it's a cool fan experience, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, it should be historic title town because they're not current title town.
Oh.
Am I wrong though?
Yes, massively.
No, I'm not. Boston has more titles than Green Bay does in the last 4 decades.
Yeah,
Chicago has more. LA has more. New York has more. Tampa Bay has more.
It's great that this is in
more.
football conversations, not other sports.
Oh, football? Okay. Well, then let's go to the team that has more. 2 teams that have more than our title town that in modern history. Unfortunately, they're both in the AFC. Kansas City, their title town. They won more titles in the last 3 years than you have in the last 4 decades.
Oh my God! So now we're gonna rotate it around like a WWE belt.
Well, then the title is not a permanent title. It's not a permanent title. Boston has more NFL titles, 6 in the last 2 decades than you do in the last 5.
Oh man!
Oh, they're the women's title town. Lucas says, "Okay."
Man, you hear that freaking jealousy going back to back to back?
There's no jealousy.
Oh,
I'm just saying
there massively is.
No, it's like no, because look,
title town.
I'm
So
just saying, and
Joe,
Joe,
all these other sports into here.
You cannot call yourself title town if you're not winning titles.
Well, pretty sure we've won quite a few of them already.
Really? When was the last one?
The last one, it was
15 years ago. 15 years ago. How many titles have you won in the last 5 decades?
At least they've won in Ken's lifetime. I'm sitting here like the last time the Raiders won a Super Bowl, I was 1 year old and I don't remember it. So
I remember that game, Joe.
Can't really. Yeah, Marcus Allen.
Yes, sir.
Man.
Yep. I'm just saying, it's like the title town area is cool. The name is just misleading because Green Bay is no longer title town.
Man, I wish the Raiders could just win one before I go, man. Just one. I just want to see them hold that trophy one time. And it'd be nice during Max Crosby's career if we could get him a trophy, you know? That would be nice, dude. I could stop watching football at that point.
You probably should at that point because it might be a long time before the Raiders win again.
Just one, man. Just give me one.
Doesn't that piss you off that they pissed Gruden off enough to go to an opposite team and beat you in the Super Bowl?
Well, no, remember they traded him.
They traded him.
Yeah. But I remember that too. But hey, you know who we really got to feel for is Luka because he's never seen his team win a Super Bowl. Or our Lions fans who've never even seen their team go to one.
I was going to say, I highly doubt Luka's seen his team go to a Super Bowl He doesn't look like a guy old enough to be alive in the 70s.
Well, he might have been alive, but maybe he was too young to remember. But on that note, guys, have a great Thursday. We'll see y'all back here tomorrow. We'll probably get into some more hilarity and make fun of Titletown not winning titles in over 5 decades.
Oh, we can make fun of Chicago always losing.
Oh, we do that anyways. All right, guys. Have a great day. We'll see y'all tomorrow.